The year was 480 BC. There was a mountain pass named Thermopylae. A battle took place there that changed history. We have all seen Hollywood's movie 300, in which King Leonidas and his 300 warriors fought against millions of Persians. In this video, we will see what Hollywood wrote and what actually happened in history, because the truth is far more bitter and interesting. First of all, the 300 warriors. Everyone thinks Leonidas only brought 300 soldiers, 300 brave. Leonidas brought 300 Spartan hoplites. Hoplites means elite soldiers who had the best training, but his total army was 7,000 soldiers. The 300 soldiers were Spartans, but 1,100 soldiers were from other city-states. So the first lie is, it was not just 300 warriors, but along with them 6,700 others gave their lives. Now comes the second lie: Xerxes' army in millions of soldiers, 2 million. Herodotus had written that Xerxes had 2 million soldiers. Ancient history. What do today's historians say? They thought, observed, researched. Xerxes probably had between 100,000 to 300,000 soldiers. Yes, these numbers are large, but not 2 million. Now the biggest question is, what exactly did Leonidas and his soldiers do during freedom, honor, and glory? But the reality was slightly different. In 480 BC, Persian Emperor Xerxes came with a huge army intending to conquer Greece. At that time, the Persian Empire was one of the most powerful empires in the world. On the other hand, Greece was not a single country. It was a collection of many different city-states like Athens, Sparta, and when Xerxes reached Greece, Greek leaders realized one thing clearly. If they did not unite, their defeat was almost certain. So they devised a strategy. They had to block the enemy at one place so that the rest of the Greek kings. Leonidas knew from the start that this was a suicide mission. He knew the Persians could not be stopped forever. Eventually, they would advance, and when they did, he and his soldiers would not survive. Then Leonidas understood that the game was over. So what did Leonidas do? He ordered most of his soldiers to leave, but he himself stayed back. Along with him were about 300 Spartans and a commander decided to stay with his soldiers, knowing the chances of survival were minimal so that others could live. Today, we remember the Spartans as noble warriors, disciplined soldiers, and freedom fighters. Sparta was a military state where the entire society, army, and war revolved around a system based on very harsh rules. Helots were actually an oppressed class who worked for Sparta and Spartan children. If any child appeared weak, the parents had the right to throw that child off a cliff. Spartan women were told to just bear soldiers and nothing else. That was their duty. So when we call Leonidas a hero, we forget that he was the leader of a system that made slavery and massacre common. Sparta did not want to grant freedom. Sparta wanted to control all of Greece, and against Persians this Now to talk about the real Battle of Thermopylae, which lasted continuously for 3 days. When the Persian army arrived there, they thought it would be an easy victory. They had a very large army and there was only a narrow pass ahead. They expected. Spartan soldiers fought not separately but in a strong line. Shield connected to shield, spear to spear, and every soldier stood in discipline at his place. On the first day, Persian soldiers came and Leonidas decided that 7,000 men could leave, but 300 Spartans and 700 soldiers would stay behind. The rearguard, the last post, they all died. Now the most important part, what happened after Thermopylae, Holly. After Thermopylae, the Persians penetrated deep into Greece. They captured Athens, burned the city, and caused significant damage. But then came the turning point that truly changed the course of history. In 480 BC, the naval battle of Salamis to Thermopylae bought time, but Salamis changed the war's direction. Then a year later, in 479 BC, there was another battle called Plataea. There, the united Greek army defeated the Persian army and the Persians were driven out of Greece. Now one more thing we do not talk about. Who was Xerxes? Hollywood showed Xerxes as a tall, strange, almost inhuman king, covered in holes and piercings, adorned with gold jewelry, an arrogant tyrant who only wanted to live. What was the truth? Xerxes was a literate and civilized king. The Persian Empire, the Achaemenid Empire, was the largest empire in the world at that time. They had courts, libraries, and administration. They were not barbaric. Xerxes had a personal reason for attacking Greece. His father Darius had previously attacked Greece. In 490 BC, at the Battle of Marathon, the Persians were defeated. This was the biggest pain in Darius' life. He wanted to defeat Greece. It was not just a matter of power, it was a family issue. A son was seeking revenge for his father's defeat, but Hollywood turned him into a monster, a villain. But if we look from the Persians' perspective, Xerxes was a great king who expanded his empire, avenged his father's humiliation, and protected his people. This is history. Every story has a hero and the other side has a One more question, what happened to Sparta? After Thermopylae and after the Persians left, was Sparta always great? No, absolutely not. Sparta's decline, which many don't know, happened rapidly and was very humiliating. The biggest blow came. It was defeated so badly that Sparta never recovered. Sparta's population was already declining because of its cruel system, the same system that killed weak children and produced only soldiers. That system led Sparta to its end. The state that was so brave at Thermopylae vanished from history within a century. The moral is that a system that relied only on power and cruelty destroyed itself because of its own weaknesses. And in history. But one last question: why did this myth become so big? Why is this story so powerful? The answer is simple: propaganda. Immediately after Thermopylae, the Greeks themselves started spreading this story. Why? Because they needed a symbol. Look how those 300 fought and died for their country. This was a motivational tool, war propaganda, and this propaganda worked. In the Battle of Salamis, when the Athenian navy defeated the Persians, the Greek sailors had Thermopylae in their minds. It was a reminder of what sacrifice means. Centuries later, the Romans also adopted the story of Thermopylae. They too needed such examples. Then during the Renaissance, European scholars studied Greek history and made Thermopylae famous again. And finally, Hollywood, Frank Miller's graphic novel 300 and then Zack Snyder's film made it known worldwide. This is what happens when history becomes propaganda. History stays alive, but only the parts that people want to remember. And centuries later, because of that propaganda, we know Thermopylae not for its real history. Hollywood. But history was much more complicated, and perhaps that's why history is far more interesting. If you want to know more such stories that changed the world, subscribe and tell in the comments which part you want to see.